Remember when a Disney movie about losing Pee-wee hockey kids grew a real NHL team? Not a toy line, not a tie-in cartoon, an actual franchise that skated onto real ice and lifted a real championship trophy. I didn't even know there was a real hockey team until years later. I was scrolling through some old sports highlights and suddenly saw it. The same logo, the same name, the same duck mask. For a second I thought it was a joke. How does a Disney movie about a bunch of kids who couldn't skate become an actual NHL franchise? That was the moment it stopped being just a movie I liked and became something else, something that actually existed in the real world. Here's what we're getting into. Which future Oscar-bound teenager got benched by his own parents? How a movie no critic respected made one American state rewrite its laws and pour millions into ice. And the wholesome Disney comedy that started life as a revenge story about an alcoholic. Disney didn't just make a hit with the Mighty Ducks, they turned it into a machine, one that built a real team, a real championship, and a real piece of American law. And then, years later, they tried to throw the whole thing away. If you ever rented hockey movies on VHS and quacked at someone you weren't supposed to, subscribe. You're exactly who this is for. These are 15 weird facts you didn't know about the Mighty Ducks. Number 15. The Near-Miss Hall of Fame. Before Emilio Estevez ever laced up Gordon Bombay's skates, Disney had a wish list that would break your brain. Tom Cruise, Tom Hanks, Michael J. Fox, Bill Murray. Murray got rejected because Disney said he was too old for the part. Meanwhile, a kid named Leonardo DiCaprio walked in and auditioned for Charlie Conway. He didn't get it. Jake Gyllenhaal auditioned too. His parents said no. Not the studio. His own mum and dad decided their son wasn't doing this one. The role went to 13-year-old Joshua Jackson, third acting job of his entire career. And the guy who wrote the whole script? Stephen Brill begged Disney to let him play Bombay himself. They told him they needed a big name, so the writer got to sit back and watch someone else say his own lines. Some of those kids who got cast became stars. Some of them got a very different kind of story. But the cast Disney finally assembled to sell this family classic. Every last one of them started with a lie. Number 14. The Dark Original. The original Mighty Ducks script had no quack chant, no flying V, no plucky underdogs learning to believe in themselves. Stephen Brill's first draft was about an ex-NICL player drowning in alcohol. A man so broken, he coached a kids team solely to destroy his former coach. Revenge, addiction, a grown man using children as pawns. Disney bought it anyway. Then they sanded every dark edge off. The alcoholic became a hotshot lawyer with a DUI. The revenge plot became court-ordered community service. The rage became a punchline about a guy named Ducksworth. Next time you watch Bombay give that locker room speech about teamwork, remember, underneath that Disney polish is a man who was written to hurt people. The feel-good version worked. But the bones of something much uglier are still holding the whole thing up. Number 13. The Liars on Ice. Here's something almost every actor on this movie had in common. They lied. When casting directors asked if they could skate, they said sure. They could not skate. Some of them had never laced up a pair of hockey skates in their lives. The producers expected this. They'd planned for it. So before a single camera rolled, Disney shipped the entire cast to Minnesota for hockey boot camp. Picture it. A dozen child actors from Los Angeles who'd never touched a frozen pond, being drilled by real hockey coaches in January in Minnesota. It worked. You bought every slap shot, every flying V, every dramatic save. Sometimes the best sports movies begin with the best audition lies. Of course, once you're in Minnesota in January, your skating skills are the least of your problems. Number 12. The Kiss That Froze. Minnesota in January is cold. 55 degrees below zero is something else entirely. That's the temperature on the night Emilio Estevez and Heidi Kling filmed their kiss. Their lips froze together. Not in a cute movie way. Their skin fused. The makeup team rushed in with warm water and carefully dripped it onto both actors' mouths until they could separate. Nightmare fuel disguised as a family film. But what gets me is this. They shot the entire movie in Minnesota, not on a soundstage, not on a backlot, real frozen lakes, real outdoor rinks, real frostbite weather every single day for months, and the state loved having them there. You have no idea how much. Some movies are made in comfort. This one was made in survival mode, and you can feel it in every frame. The critics couldn't. Number 11. The critics were wrong. The kids knew. The Mighty Ducks opened on October 2nd, 1992. Critics immediately sharpened their knives. Rotten Tomatoes would eventually land at 27%. The consensus used the word predictable. Roger Ebert said it might appeal to younger kids. Might. The audience had a different verdict. CinemaScore gave it a straight A, over $50 million at the box office on a $14 million budget. Then another $54 million in home video rentals alone. More than $100 million from a movie the critical establishment dismissed. Kids didn't read reviews. They wore the jersey to school. They did the quack chant at recess. They rented the VHS until the tracking lines ruined the picture. They turned a film the industry shrugged at into a pop culture phenomenon. And that gap between what critics said and what audiences did, that is the crack the entire machine was built on. Number 10. Nobody planned any of this. The ending of The Mighty Ducks shows Bombay heading off to minor league tryouts. He promises the kids he'll be back next season. It looks exactly like a sequel setup. It wasn't. The writer, Stephen Brill, said the crew joked about it on the last day of shooting. They laughed because nobody was bold enough to believe there'd be a second film. $50 million and $100 million afterlife changed that math fast. D2 came 2 years later. D3 2 years after that. But the sequels were just the beginning, because someone at Disney looked at those box office numbers and saw something much bigger than movies. Number 9. The CEO said the quiet part out loud. In 1993, Disney CEO Michael Eisner sat down with the Los Angeles Times, and he just said it out loud, on the record. He laid out the entire plan. The Ducks would air on Disney's own TV channel. Duck merchandise would fill every Disney store in the country. Hockey programming would run on the Disney Channel, and Mighty Duck parades would march down Main Street in Disneyland. He even predicted they'd win 39 games their first season. He was wrong about the wins. He was dead right about everything else. This wasn't a man running a sports team. This was a man running a brand with a hockey-shaped hole in its portfolio. And that brand's grip on the Mighty Ducks was about to become the entire story. But Eisner's plan didn't just work inside Disney's walls. It worked so well that a state government decided to copy it. Number 8. The law that a movie wrote. In 1994, the Minnesota State Legislature looked at what this movie had done to their state. Youth hockey registrations were climbing. Kids were flooding into rinks that didn't have room for them. Communities needed ice and didn't have the money to build it. So the state created something called the Mighty Ducks program. That is a real name, written into Minnesota law, funded by the state legislature. Over $18 million in public money poured into ice arena construction across the state. The result, 61 new sheets of ice, real rinks in real towns where real kids learned to skate. A Pee-wee hockey movie rewriting state infrastructure law sounds like a fever dream. It's not. It's Minnesota statute. The program ran for over a decade. In 2016, it was renamed after Senator Jim Metzen, one of its fiercest champions. And in 2020, they funded it again, this time to replace aging refrigeration systems in the arenas the original grants had built. Right now, somewhere in Minnesota, a kid is learning to skate on ice that exists because of this film. Let that sit for a second. Stop and think about what we've covered so far. A $14 million movie that no critic respected. It launched careers. It froze lips together at 55 below. It made a state government write real laws and pour millions into real ice. Everything this movie touched turned real, but the machine wasn't finished. What Disney built next made the entire hockey world question its own sanity, and what they eventually did to the whole thing, that's the part that stings. We've still got alien ducks on network television, a child star who lost everything and fought his way back, and a $50 million price tag with a line of fine print nobody noticed. Stay. Number 7. The Alien Ducks of Anaheim. D2 and D3 didn't just continue the story. They wore the NHL team's uniform. Disney redesigned the movie sequels to match the real Anaheim franchise's logo and team colors. The films promoted the NHL team. The NHL team promoted the films. It was a closed loop of corporate synergy so tight it could have strangled itself. Wayne Gretzky showed up in D2. Chris Chelios showed up. Paul Kariya, the real Anaheim captain, showed up. Actual NHL legends doing cameos in a children's hockey movie, because that's what the machine demanded. And then came the cartoon. Disney made an animated TV series about the Mighty Ducks, not about kids playing hockey, about an alien race of hockey-playing ducks who got attacked by an evil reptilian army and escaped through an interdimensional portal. To Anaheim, California. This is a real show. It aired on IBC. Disney owned IBC. It was gloriously unhinged, and every frame existed to sell tickets to a hockey team that had been a movie character 12 months earlier. The synergy was running at full speed, the money was pouring in, but all that machinery had a cost, and not just in dollars. Number 6. The goalie who fell and got back up. Shaun Weiss was 14 when he played Greg Goldberg, the wisecracking goalie everybody loved. He was originally cast for a single line in the first film. He was so good, they expanded his part across all 3 movies. After the trilogy ended, the roles slowed down. He showed up on Freaks and Geeks, a few guest spots here and there. Then things got hard. Weiss struggled with addiction for years. Multiple arrests between 2017 and 2020. Headlines no one wants attached to their name. This is the part that matters. In January 2022, Shaun Weiss graduated from drug court, 2 years sober. He went through dental reconstruction. He started working as a recovery coach, helping other people fight the same battle he'd fought. And the fans? The Goldberg fans showed up. Thousands of strangers who'd loved that wisecracking goalie sent messages, donations, and support. A character he played at 14 was still carrying him at 43. Remember number 15. All those kids who almost got cast and didn't. The ones who did get cast carried this movie with them for the rest of their lives. Some of those lives got very dark before they found the light again. Number 5. The merch machine and the exit. At the height of the machine, Mighty Ducks merchandise outsold every other team in the entire NHL. Not the Red Wings, not the Rangers, not the Canadiens, the Ducks. A team that had existed for less than 2 years. Disney pushed the jerseys through their theme parks and Disney stores worldwide. Kids who had never watched a single hockey game owned that logo. The brand was doing what the team on the ice couldn't, winning. But the winning had a ceiling. For years, Disney treated the Ducks more like a marketing division than a sports franchise. Winning games mattered less than moving product, and when the NHL lockout hit in 2004, Disney tried to sell. The best offer they got, $40 million, less than what they'd paid to get in. In 2005, they finally let go. Henry and Susan Samueli bought the franchise, and the first thing they did, dropped the word mighty from the name. Disney built this machine, then they walked away, and they weren't done walking. Number 4. Delete, deny, repeat. In 2021, Disney brought the Ducks back. The Mighty Ducks Game Changers premiered on Disney+, with Emilio Estevez returning as Gordon Bombay. Critics gave it 87% on Rotten Tomatoes. For once, everybody agreed this worked. Then it fell apart. Estevez reportedly left before season 2 amid a contract dispute. Sources pointed to the show's mandatory vaccination policy. Estevez pointed to creative differences. Either way, he was gone. The show limped through a second season without its star, got cancelled. And then Disney did something worse. In May 2023, they removed Game Changers from Disney Plus entirely, erased it during a company-wide content purge to cut costs. The franchise that had once generated a real NHL team got deleted from a streaming library like a failed pilot, a certified dumpster fire of brand management. But Estevez wasn't done. He went home and wrote a spec script for Mighty Ducks 4. Bombay comes back to coach a women's professional hockey team. He called the script charming, contemporary, exactly right for the moment. Disney said no. The company that built an empire on Coach Bombay wouldn't let Coach Bombay come back. Eisner's machine had one design flaw. It never loved what it built. Number 3. The $50 million bet. Let's talk about the price of turning a children's movie into a real sports franchise. In December 1992, just 2 months after the film opened, the NFL awarded Disney an expansion team. The entry fee, $50 million. Half of that, $25 million, went straight to the Los Angeles Kings, not to the league office, to the Kings. Compensation for sharing the Southern California market, her company famous for cartoon mice paid $25 million to a rival hockey franchise for the privilege of existing near them. All because a movie about fake Pee-wee players made $50 million at the box office. On March 1, 1993, Disney executives walked into the brand new Anaheim Arena and they told the world the team's name, the Mighty Ducks of Anaheim, named directly after a movie that had been in theaters barely 6 months earlier. Nobody in the history of professional sports had ever done this before. Name a franchise after a film, after a brand, after a piece of intellectual property. And when opening night finally came, the hockey purists could not believe what walked onto their ice. Number 2. The night hockey lost its mind. October 8, 1993. First home game in franchise history. And it didn't start with a puck drop. It started with a 20-minute pre-game show, a full Disney on Ice production. Mickey Mouse was on the rink. Goofy was on the rink. Donald Duck obviously was on the rink. Somebody played Be Our Guest on electric guitar, and then the announcer told 15,000 fans to pull out their complimentary plastic duck calls and blow. 15,000 grown adults blowing plastic duck whistles inside a professional hockey arena. This is real. This happened on purpose. The hockey establishment watched this and lost its collective mind. Journalists in traditional markets refused to take the team seriously. They called it a gimmick, a toy, a marketing experiment wearing shoulder pads. Nobody was laughing at the duck calls because they were funny. They were laughing because they believed this was the dumbest thing professional sports had ever seen. Here's the thing about being laughed at. Sometimes the joke lands on everybody else, because that toy, that gimmick, that marketing experiment, it did something no other movie, no other brand, and no other stunt has ever done before or since. Number 1. The only one. The Mighty Ducks of Anaheim are the only professional sports team in North American history named after a brand, not a city, not a mascot, not a river or a mountain or a historical regiment. A Disney movie. No NFL team was ever named after a film. No MLB team. No NBA team. Over 150 years of professional sports on this continent. Only one franchise traces its name back to a screenplay. Think about what had to happen for this sentence to be true. A screenwriter nobody knew had to write a dark script about revenge and alcoholism. Disney had to buy it, then sand it down to a family comedy. Bill Murray had to pass. Tom Cruise had to pass. Tom Hanks had to pass. Jake Gyllenhaal's parents had to say no. Leonardo DiCaprio had to lose an audition. A bunch of kids had to lie about skating. 2 actors had to get their lips frozen together at 55 below. Critics had to hate it, and audiences had to love it anyway. All so that Michael Eisner could look at the numbers and say, "We should build a real team." He spent $50 million on that idea, built the arena next to Disneyland, put duck calls in every seat, and the hockey world laughed. They stopped laughing on June 6, 2007. That night, the Anaheim Ducks won the Stanley Cup, beat the Ottawa Senators in 5 games. A franchise born from a kids' movie with 27% on Rotten Tomatoes. A team the hockey establishment had once treated as a punchline, standing on NHL ice, holding Lord Stanley's Cup. Real players who trained their whole lives wearing a logo dreamed up by a movie studio. Real fans who first fell in love with the Ducks as children watching a worn-out VHS tape. And in 2024, the team brought back the original duck mask logo, redesigned, modernized, but still, unmistakably, the face from the movie. Over 30 years later, and the DNA of a Disney film is still skating on NHL ice. That is the Mighty Ducks. It was never just a movie, it was a seed that grew a franchise, a lore, a cartoon, a Stanley Cup, and 61 sheets of real ice. And it all started with Quack. The Mighty Ducks was never a movie that got a tie-in. It is the tie-in. The only time a brand skated off a screen onto real ice and lifted a real trophy. Disney tried to throw it away, and it came back wearing the logo anyway. So tell me in the comments, which duck did you want to be growing up, and what other movie deserved to become a real team? Was the Anaheim franchise a cynical marketing stunt, or the purest proof that a movie can be loved? Pick a side, I'll be reading. And until next time, this is Remember When.